Thanks so much, Stephen. That's great. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about rebuilding the past. I'm talking about the technology of the Virtual Record Treasury of Ireland. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the project is based around recreating essentially this building, which I'll be talking about. The old Public Record Office of Ireland, opened in 1867, which was destroyed during the Irish Civil War on the 30th of June 1922. During that Civil War's conflict in Dublin, in its opening engagements, a fire broke out as fighting erupted between pro and anti-treaty forces in the Four Courts complex where this building was situated. An explosion of munitions which had been stored into the building ignited a catastrophic blaze. And in a single afternoon, the Public Record Office of Ireland, which is home to centuries of historical documents, was reduced to ruins. The loss was staggering. Among the treasures destroyed were the original census records that spanned the 19th century, Church of Ireland parish registers, testamentary records such as wills, countless maps and deeds, not to mention the records of Ireland's higher courts, as well as much of the records of central government in Ireland, some going back as far as the Norman conquest of the 12th century. These documents were irreplaceable, and they constituted the collective memory of Ireland as a nation at its moment of independence. In fact, a few days after the fire, the Irish Times described the loss in the following words: "These precious records, which would have been so useful to the future historian, have been devoured by the flames or scattered in fragments by the four winds of heaven. The record treasury, with its glass roof and its tall side windows, is now a sorry-looking wreck." However, today we are rebuilding this lost archive destroyed over a century ago, not physically, but digitally. Using cutting-edge technology, we are reconstructing as far as possible Ireland's lost historic records, making them accessible to researchers, genealogists, and the public worldwide. This is the Virtual Record Treasury of Ireland, or VRTI, a project that combines history, technology, and innovation to bring the past back to life. And today I'd like to demonstrate some aspects of the project, showing you how we're using virtual reality, digital platforms, and even artificial intelligence to reconnect with this once lost heritage. Now, the Virtual Record Treasury of Ireland represents a digital reimagining of this lost archive, the Public Record Office, bringing its scattered fragments back to life in a new and accessible form. Our mission is simple yet ambitious: to recreate the destroyed archive virtually, piece by piece. Now, how do you rebuild an archive that no longer exists? And the answer lies in two main areas: collaboration and technology. Over the past few years, we've worked with archives, libraries, and researchers across the globe to locate surviving copies of original records that were once housed in that destroyed archive. We now have over 80 participating institutions, including 5 core partners, which include the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland, the National Archives UK, the National Archives of Ireland, as well as the Irish Manuscripts Commission and Trinity College Dublin. To give you some statistics about where we are as a project, the Virtual Record Treasury now holds over 200,000 documents or items. Now, some of these items are fully digitized, transcribed, some are merely catalog descriptions. The scale of what is available, however, I think is something we can be quite proud of. The website currently holds over 260,000 digital images. It houses 273 million words of machine-generated transcription from original items, and over 5 million words of human-generated transcription and description of lost archival items. The website provides access to replacements and supplementary sources for everything from medieval charters, royal documents which established a new town or city, up to the 19th century census records which were once thought lost. The result is a treasure trove of information that's not just for academics, but for anyone curious about the past. The Virtual Record Treasury is free to use, it is a public good, and it very much informs the ethos with which we work on it. Now, you're very free to explore the Treasury simply by using the search bar function, the same way you would use Google, or the far more advanced search function, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the VRTI also provides guided access to discrete categories of records. So for instance, you can explore one of our gold seams. These are full-scale reconstructions of entire series of records that were once thought lost. These include historical context, additional exploration tools, and usually draw material from several repositories. One of the great things about the gold seams, and indeed the project as a whole, is that it assembles material from collections held in many different archives. These are items which are directly related to each other, but are held in different institutions with different websites. So what we're providing is essentially a neutral terrain or database that allows you, the user, to see and search for all these various collections in one sort of central location. Some examples of gold seams that you can currently access on the site, to give you a few of them. One of the first ones we did is what we called Circle 2.0, which is the calendar of the Irish Chancery letters, 1244 to 1509. Now, sorry about that. For those of you who don't know, that's my daughter, Robin. Sorry. So, obviously, not too fond of hearing me waffle on anyway. Sorry, to continue. The Chancery records, the Chancery letters, rather, is what we're providing is a calendar, which is a table of contents for an archive. It provides summaries of the documents themselves. Now, the Chancery was essentially the king's paperwork headquarters in the medieval period. It's responsible for writing all the important letters on the king's behalf. They were usually written in Latin, sealed with the Great Seal of Ireland. And this resource provides an accessible and accurate summary in English of all these letters from 1244 to 1509. It's almost 3 centuries, and touching on almost every aspect of English power in medieval Ireland. Similarly, the related collection of the medieval exchequer. The exchequer is the government's financial headquarters in the medieval period. It's a giant ledger where every tax, payment, and fine is recorded. And again, between roughly 1250 and 1450, we have records of all the money flowing in and out of the government's coffers. It's essentially like bank statements of medieval Ireland, revealing who paid what, where money was spent, and how the kingdom was run. We also have several other collections which will be of interest to scholars of the early modern period, such as the Cromwellian surveys. This brings together actually 3 different sets of items: the books of survey and distribution, the civil survey, and the down survey. This is a actually pretty comprehensive survey of land ownership in the second half of the 17th century. So if you think about the massive dispossession of Catholic landlords post-Cromwellian invasion, this is a great resource for actually discovering how that happened. It's a nearly comprehensive ledger of land ownership in late 17th century Ireland. We also currently have the 1766 religious census. This is not a census in the normal use of the word, a statutory census. Rather, it was a head count to determine the numbers of Catholics, Protestants, and quote-unquote dissenters in late 18th century Ireland, instigated by the Irish Parliament. So again, we thought most of that was completely lost. Our colleague, Brian Gurin, who's our census expert, has had great success actually reconstructing some of the records of this sort of key head count of late 18th century Ireland. You can also explore some of our smaller but also really productive collections, which we call curated collections, which are, yes, smaller, but often more thematically focused collections. Again, we have some great material for medievalists, Irish kings and English rulers, which is a great body of translated diplomatic documents between English royal power and Gaelic Irish leaders roughly in the sort of late 14th to early mid 15th century. We also have the gleanings from the Irish census, 1813 to 1815, which again shows some of those early 19th century census records which were destroyed in 1922. Some of the scattered remnants and transcriptions and survivals of that have been brought together by Brian Gurin, our census expert, and he's tracked down absolutely amazing stuff, including a lot of great material located here in PRONI. Transcriptions made from these censuses before 1922, before the originals were destroyed, and bringing them together in one central location in a very easy to use format. I don't have time to go through all the other created collections, but there are some really great ones for you to explore. Grand Jury Records and Maps provides an amazing collection of maps and local government records dating from the 18th to mid-19th century, from basically the local authorities which sort of predated city and county councils. The Dublin Gazette, which is an amazing resource of sort of the official publication of Ireland, of the sort of Lord Lieutenant and Chief Secretary's office in the mid-18th century, as well as the Rebellion Papers, a great set of calendars of a key source we're very excited about relating to the 1798 rebellion. Now, those are some of the goodies we can offer you at the moment, but we'd also like to talk to you about some of the very innovative ways the project has used technology, including VR. We'd like you to step into the past, quite literally. This is the VR model that we have reconstructed. Using architectural plans, historical descriptions, and photographs of the destroyed archive, we've created a 3D reconstruction of the building as it stood. This includes additional information about the occupation and destruction, as well as its construction preceding that. It gives you a virtual tour, which you can see not only the exterior, but you can, hopefully, this will bring you into, yes, following the green markers, into the reading room that was there before the fire in 1922. You can look around and see what was there, as well as clicking on some of these additional information points, see photographs of the destroyed reading room, as well as interacting with some of the documents that we have been able to find supplements or replacements for. But yes, that's what it looked like before the fire. We recreated that. I think also I'll show you here as a demo one of the very few Irish language documents that was actually housed there that we have survived, which is a Brennan judgment from the late 16th century. This is all well and good, and the reading room is a very exciting part of it. But if you keep clicking through this door, through this area, which is the fire break of the building, you find yourself in the Treasury proper. So the fire break is this area that was between the reading room at the front and the Treasury at the back. Going through it, you see the reconstruction of the lost Treasury itself. Now, you can use these markers, particularly those green marking guides, to explore not only the building itself, but find different Easter eggs and resources scattered throughout the 5 floors of the Treasury, including some great material, not only chance survivals, material about the construction of the archive in the first place, but also work from our artist in residence, Mairead McCluskey, which is housed at the 5th floor, I believe. Now, this is all well and good. We're very proud to be able to show you sort of video like this, but I suppose the key question here is, why does this matter? Well, it helps us understand the physical and historical context of the archive. It's one thing to read about a public record office, it's another to actually stand inside of it. This was a state-of-the-art building at its time. It was designed to be fireproof, all metal stairs, shelves, and walkways. There was no candle or gas lamps allowed. That fire break I showed you was to actually sort of compartmentalize. If there was a fire in the reading room, it would not spread to the back. Now, the irony, of course, is that when it happened, it actually was the other way around. It was munitions stored in the Treasury itself. It was actually the reading room that was preserved. But it's actually a profoundly, I think, significant experience to be able to sort of stand inside this and actually conceive the real scale of what was lost in 1922. Now, the heart of what we've done to reconstruct this lost archive is the digital platform of VRTI, a vast searchable database that reunites these scattered fragments from the original archive. When the record office was destroyed, its records didn't vanish entirely. Copies, duplicates, related documents survived in other archives around the world. But these records are often, because they're held in various different locations, disconnected. So our job is sort of put them back together like pieces of a puzzle. Our platform solves this problem of the scattered nature of the survivors. To give you one example, if you were to explore the virtual record treasury, to go through and not only search but browse by archive, you could go through, look at the different institutions which join, go through the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland, and find an item that's housed in this very building. It's a letter from the Castlereagh papers. It's a letter from a General Gerald Blake, to Lord Castlereagh, the Chief Secretary, describing how he was putting down the rebellion in County Wexford during 1798. Now that's interesting, that's great. We provided you a good digital image, there's a transcription of it, that's hopefully enhancing access. But the real sort of added value here is you can then click down to linked sources. And we're telling you, this is what it replaced, this is what was lost, the Chief Secretary's office papers, they were destroyed, this is a replacement for what was there. But crucially, here's other items that are linked to it. So for instance, General Lake also wrote to Lord Castlereagh about another item that very same day, but that letter is held somewhere else, in the National Archives UK. Similarly, a copy of this is also held in yet another archive, the National Archives of Ireland. So 3 different archives all holding related items, but can now all be brought together and accessed and compared doing a single page as a clearinghouse for this archival information. We're hoping these links kind of help reveal the paper flow of government reports and correspondence and really do add something to the user. Now, the platform is designed to be user-friendly, whether you're a professional historian or someone who's exploring your family tree. The advanced search function empowers users to explore the Treasury with precision and ease. You can search across fields such as title, transcription, creator, repository, but you can also tailor your queries to refine them to exact phrases, specific keywords. You can restrict it by year or date range for the item you're looking for. And the ability to filter by format and replacement type helps further refine this search. Now, the other area, that's the final area I talk to you today about, where really cutting edge technology has provided us with some great opportunities, is in AI-assisted handwriting transcription. It's one thing to put up images of manuscript documents. If they're not legible to the general user, there's only a limited use value there. We have been using, and one of the first major digital humanities projects on this island to use Transcribus, which is a machine learning assisted transcription software. Where artificial intelligence can help, we use it with caution. Transcribus applies machine learning to assist in transcribing these handwritten documents into searchable text. Now, it's not perfect. We're not claiming it is. Human expertise is still essential to check and refine the results, but it's a very powerful tool. Now, I'm a historian and not a computer scientist. For those interested in learning more about how Transcribus works and some of the technology behind AI transcription of handwriting, I would direct you to the Transcribus website, which has several very good tutorial videos about the actual science underlying it. But I can tell you a few things about how we use it. We train the Transcribus AI on historical scripts, teaching it to recognize different handwriting styles, whether that's 17th century secretarial hand or medieval Latin. It makes mistakes, we correct them, and it refines its process and gets better and better. We estimate it to be between 80 to 85% accurate. Now, so it's not a case that you can simply shove a document into Transcribus and get a perfect outcome at the end. That's not what it does. But it does allow you to find, even if it's at 80 or 85%, it'll be accurate enough that you can search documents for place names, people names. It helps you navigate the document much more nimbly than if there was no transcription whatsoever. But interpretation, sort of the doing history part, is still up to you, the user. Also, I should sort of put a caveat here. For really high value documents, I'm thinking the more rare medieval manuscripts or some of the more important letters here in PRONI, we still rely on human experts to decipher without AI what is being said and to provide a much more bespoke transcription for the website. So there's levels of transcription quality. Those are always very clearly demarcated on our site. You will be told whether this is machine generated or human transcription. Once trained, Transcribus can transcribe things at incredible speed. For instance, a 200-page manuscript that could take a human weeks to transcribe can be done by Transcribus in a matter of hours, if not minutes sometimes, depending on the handwriting. Give one more example. In the VRTI, there's a collection of papers from a former Lord Lieutenant, Lord Anglesey, papers held here by PRONI. Now, Lord Anglesey was Lord Lieutenant at the time of Daniel O'Connell and Catholic emancipation in 1829. I've transcribed some of these letters myself, and I've also seen Transcribus do it for me, and I know which one is more effective. It's Transcribus with me doing quality control. And some of this material will be up in the next round of material offerings from the VRTI. And I just want to sort of end on that, talking about Transcribus with one final note, which is this isn't necessarily just about speed, it's about accessibility. The average user being able to actually look at things in English or in Latin in searchable text rather than having to decipher historical handwriting styles is really a democratization of the archives, which is one of the key tenets and ethos of our project. And it's something we are very proud of. But also imagine what in the future, a very carefully designed computer program could do. If we have 275 million words of historical text, what could something looking for connections between those different texts find if actually put on the right footing? Just something to think about. Now, to conclude, what does the future hold for the virtual record treasury? We're constantly expanding the treasury. We're adding new documents. We're improving the platform. We're refining AI tools, training them on more scripts, improving their accuracy. But this summer, at the end of June, we're going to be very excited to unveil several major additions to the VRTI, offering new ways to explore this country's history. I'm running short on time, so I'll only sort of whet your appetite with a few very brief descriptions of what is coming down the line this summer. We will be launching, and I suspect this will be of interest to family historians most pointedly, we are launching a comprehensive census portal, which will offer searchable transcriptions of census records from 1821 to 1851, alongside ancillary materials like freeholders lists and rent rolls, accessible both through name searches as well as a geographic interface, which is a map interface essentially. We are exciting for historians of the late 17th and mid 18th century. A brilliant project in collaboration with the National Archives UK called the Integrated State Papers Project, which keep your eye on that, as well as projects on the Irish Parliamentary Register and Cavendish transcripts, rare parliamentary records from the 18th century, and much more besides. But I would say this, in conclusion, the real future of the RTI lies not so much with these discrete projects and future offerings, it lies with its users: historians, genealogists, educators, and the public. The project isn't just about preserving the past, it's about making it accessible and meaningful to everyone in the future. Whether you're a researcher, a student, or simply curious about history, I invite you to explore the Virtual Record Treasury. Visit our website, please try out things like the VR model, play around with the search functions, and see for yourself how technology is helping rebuild the past. Thank you so much. Now, I'd like to invite my colleague Lynn Kilgallen, Dr. Lynn Kilgallen, to come up and talk to you about another great, really exciting technological aspect of the VRTI, which is the knowledge graph.
Thanks very much, Tim, and hello everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today to share our work in general on the Virtual Record Treasury with you. I, like Tim, am a historian working on the project, but I'm putting on a slightly different hat today and talking about a major additional aspect of the Virtual Record Treasury's work undertaken mainly by our computer science team in the ADAPT Centre in Trinity College, which is an AI centre of research. So what I'm going to do today is take you on a kind of whistle-stop tour through this resource and give you a sneak preview of something that, unlike what you've seen today, is not immediately available, but is quickly coming down the tracks, meaning that we have quite a lot of work to do over the next while too. Our work in the Virtual Treasury, I suppose to begin, doesn't stop at simply finding replacement records, recovering what we can from what was lost and placing them back on their virtual shelves, making them accessible to you. We're also exploring new ways to unlock the content of those records, so the histories that we find contained within them, and to kind of help us explore the lives of the people, the connections, the histories of the individuals contained within these records. What I hope you'll have gotten a sense of already is one of the main challenges we face, and that's scale. It's simply the sheer amount of documents that we have now within the Treasury, the sheer amount of words that have been transcribed and platformed in digital format. So when you're bringing together records, I suppose, that across 7 centuries, you're dealing with thousands of documents, again, as Tim said, produced over different periods, written sometimes in different languages, with many different spellings of places or personal names. So it's a challenge to navigate these sources, and that's one of the questions I suppose we've been asking ourselves over the last few years. How do we navigate those sources? How can we help people to navigate those sources and find what they need across so many and so varied a set of archival collections? Now, if we were talking, just to kind of introduce the topic, about a single source, so you had a book, for instance, you might turn to the back of the book and use the index, very traditional, to look up a particular specific individual or a specific place. It'll have its page numbers listed beside it, and you know, right, that's where I want to go in the book, that's where I want to find things. When you're trying to do that at scale across an entire archive, across so many different collections, that's a challenge of a different scale entirely. It's another level. So with that in mind, what I'm going to talk about is the tool we're building in the Virtual Treasury called the Knowledge Graph for Irish History. And it sounds strange and unfamiliar most of the time, but it'll become clear. At its core, the whole purpose of the knowledge graph is to do just that. It's to help us map out connections between, say, people or places or offices or organizations. No, that's not it. Going there. Which appear in our historical records. we're not just storing this information that we place within the knowledge graph in a traditional database. So it sounds kind of like a traditional database. It goes a little bit beyond that. What makes this different, the knowledge graph different, is that it's a way for us to structure information that's held within these documents. So a computer doesn't just store it, kind of keep a record of it within a database. It begins to understand it. Okay, so this is again using AI adjacent technology here as well. In the graph, every piece of information that we add to it has a defined meaning, okay, that a machine can understand. This is made possible because we use very standardized ways of representing historical data. So in other words, we're taking information that is found within these texts, unstructured information that you and I can read and understand, and we're storing it in a way that a computer can make sense of. And this basically what this allows us to do is creating a machine-readable historical record that can be analysed and searched through and linked to other sources. So it's using technology that exists out there, but it is very much the first of its kind for Irish historical studies and within this kind of area in general. You might actually be quite familiar with knowledge graphs already, even if you don't quite realise it. If you've ever used Google, for instance, you've been using a knowledge graph in the background, concealed. So basically, if we take Leonardo da Vinci up here as an example, when you search for his name, this panel appears on the side of the search results. The panel contains structured information. This is the kind of material I'm talking about. So birth and death dates, famous artworks, in this case, the historical period he belonged to. The information that they're using in Google is pulling from all sorts of places on the web. It's pulling from Wikidata, from Wikipedia, other open data sets. So basically data sets where you can kind of dive in on a computer science end and extract information without any barriers in place. It's presented in such a way that the machine kind of can connect different pieces of knowledge together. So in essence, this is, now not on the scale of Google, obviously, but this is the same technology that we're using to build the knowledge graph for Irish history. And the idea is to provide not only a way to navigate the virtual treasury's documents, but also authoritative information that people can rely on in their research about historical entities or people or places that we find in our records. Crucially, this is another thing, it's not static. As the knowledge graph continues to grow, basically as we add more data to it, that we're finding in the documents which we're also adding to the Treasury, the connections between those bits of information contained, those relationships between historical entities in the graph become even richer, making it an even more powerful tool for research. So at the moment, this has all been very abstract. Over the next couple of slides, I'm going to stop explaining so much of the nuts and bolts of what a knowledge graph is, but give you a teaser of the resource as we've actually been building it and how you might find it being used down the line. So hopefully something will begin playing here. So one of the large parts of our work over the last couple of years has been building the infrastructure or the framework which sits behind the graph, so identifying the types of structured information that we want to include in it. We actually ended up doing a huge amount of work over a couple of years on this. One of the main things we've focused on, because they're the bread and butter of every bit of historical information that we really begin with, is people and places, as you can see there. But that doesn't mean very much if you can't access it. So this is what we're calling the Knowledge Graph Explorer. It does what it says on the tin. It's giving you two main avenues to search through the information contained within the knowledge graph. And this is just some statistics that we have there at the moment. The 81,000 persons is perhaps a little bit ambitious at the moment. We currently have 13,000 individuals, all drawn from the Dictionary of Irish Biography in there, but over 60,000 places currently there as well. So we have an awful lot of material that we're hoping to present to you overall. This is our homepage of the Explorer, so it's giving you a sense of the different types of information that's contained within the graph. What I want to do on the next slide is take a little bit of a dive into people. So we have a whole section of the knowledge graph which is focused on exploring persons contained within the graph. So we have our homepage here. You can search for a particular person in the knowledge graph itself. We've divided up the people contained within the graph into 3 different historical eras. So we have medieval, early modern, and that's just a way to make searching through the vast amount of material we hope to have more manageable and accessible. You can see here we've got kind of sample carousels where these images we're also pulling in from Wikidata using our linked open data, much like Google does as well. But you can cycle through and see some of the personalities that we've already added to the graph, allowing you to explore them. What I want to do is focus on one particular individual. So we'll just go in and you should hopefully be able to see our search function working. This is, again, emulating the experience on our main website, but it's searching through a different database that supports that. We have our medieval people listed here with their dates and their tags of medieval as well, which you can look through. The individual I'm going to search for in a moment is called John Swain. And I can see Sarah smiling. John Swain was a medieval archbishop of Armagh and the creator of one of the jewels of PRONI's collections, the Register of Archbishop Swain, which Sarah will be taking us through in detail, I think, later on. So he's a quite significant individual. He was a major figure, which is why he's included in the Dictionary of Irish Biography. He was an Irish ecclesiastic, obviously occupying a major position within the church in medieval Ireland, but also had this fabulous international career in Rome and at the Council of Constance. So it was a major ecclesiastical conference of the Middle Ages, where Swain had a not insignificant role within the context of Irish history. Here, what you are seeing is what we're calling an entity card for John Swain. So this is the part of the knowledge graph which stores all of that information, that structured data we have been compiling about him. So on this page, you'll see we don't have a picture for John Swain, not from the 15th century, but we do have a unique identifier, this URI or URL there. We have the era in which he was active. We have the contributor, the Dictionary of Irish Biography, and here we have a knowledge panel. So this is containing in natural language. It's recreating some of that structured information for you, and we're pulling in a description from the biography, from Swain's biography and the Dictionary of Irish Biography. The power of the knowledge graph, I think, in this particular area becomes clear when you see how easily we can jump to other sites. So we're maintaining that connection to the Dictionary of Irish Biography's own website, so you can jump out and visit and read more information there in that kind of longer format. Similarly, we also have forged a connection between John Swain in our knowledge graph to John Swain in Wikidata as well, which kind of acts as this hub to pull in bits of information that might be stored elsewhere on the web. So it's kind of it's bringing much in the same way as we do in our main resource in the VRTI. It's bringing together information from an array of different resources to try and make it as centralized and as useful as possible for the user. What we have here, oh, actually, I might just revert back for 1 second because it's interesting. One of the, let's see if it'll let me jump. One of the most important aspects of it okay, it's not going to play ball, but I'll continue talking over it. You can see here we have a section entitled Treasury links. And this is the really crucial element that I want to draw your attention to, because we have been working with the computer scientists on one side for a number of years now, building the knowledge graph and its structure. We're finally at a point where we are now linking the knowledge graph in a very meaningful way to the rest of the virtual record treasury itself. And that's when we look on this page here, you're going to see the Treasury links module. Within this module, you can see the names of various repositories, one of which is the Public Record Office. Another, I think, might be, we'll find out shortly. Another will be a published resource too. And what we can do, oh, I've mucked this up for myself, haven't I? What we can do when we click those links is what you'll be seeing in real time is us inserting that unique reference code that we have that looks like a URL. We've basically been able to take that and insert that into our database. What that means is by clicking on that and inserting it into our database, it's saying we're not just doing a search for John or Swain as we might in a normal string search. We are saying that we have identified this precise individual. We have added them to our knowledge graph, and we have inserted this unique identifier into the documents held on the virtual record Treasury so that you can connect this individual not just even to one document, but to potentially and ideally every document in which this individual, in which John Swain might appear in the virtual record Treasury. And it's also worth pointing out that this is a publicly available resource. It's a linked open data resource, so anybody in theory could take one of these URLs from the knowledge graph and insert those into perhaps another archive or another database, and it would serve to do exactly the same thing. It would congregate these records in which John Swain is mentioned or where he was created and bring them together in one place. So what it's trying to do is create quite a powerful indexing resource, much as I was talking about earlier when we're looking at a book. This is a way of indexing digital records across, not just within the Treasury, but potentially beyond it too. And you can see here we've gone through and seen one of them was the actual conserved and digitized version of Swain's Register, which is now available on the virtual record Treasury. This is John Swain being linked to a calendar created by D.A. Chart, who was previously keeper of the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland as well. So there's a nice connection there. A calendar that Chart created of John Swain's Register. So this is actually linked to John Swain's Register, as Tim showed you earlier, giving you an English language readable version of the original Latin manuscript. So it's quite a nice added bonus to be able to say we've connected John Swain in our knowledge graph for Irish history to this set of documents as well. And this is another, I think, version in which John Swain appears in the gold seam of Circle 2.0 calendar of Irish Chancery letters. So he's cropping up in multiple places, but we can really start to see how the knowledge graph can support discovery and linking of these documents together, not because of their archival connections, but rather because of the historical individuals appearing within them. So this is the real game changer for us on the knowledge graph. The last example that I want to show you, Tim has already alluded to, and this relates to a set of records connected to places contained within the knowledge graph for Irish history. It relates to the reconstructed series of census records between 1813 and 1851, which have been identified by our colleague, Dr. Brian Gurin. Within the website and within the Knowledge Graph Explorer over the next coming months, we'll be developing this population portal, basically a way for you to explore these the records and the data contained within them. This is a map interface, which I'm sure will be very familiar to many people if you're using various resources to look at records elsewhere. The difference between this map resource and other ones is this is powered by the knowledge graph for Irish history. So the same technology that we're building to collect structured data for historical persons, we've also created that for historical places as well. And that's kind of significant because we might be using what looks like a present day map, but actually we are giving the facility to link historical places to their present day equivalents, a name that might have disappeared in the past. We can connect that and say, okay, that name is now defunct. It's only found in our historical records. But if you say were to search for a modern name, you will be able to find the version that is no longer there too. What you're seeing at the moment, however, is a particular set of records being connected through the knowledge graph to documents that Brian has identified. So here you're able to scroll through, I think I was a couple of smiths and farmers that we found in there. So it's a really powerful way, again, of linking up our documents to this new and emerging technology. Okay, I get the sense that I'm running out of time, so I am going to pause on that particular moment, but say do keep a lookout in the future months on virtualtreasury.ie, and more to come. Thank you.
I'm not a historian, I'm a conservator, so I'm the interloper in all of these conversations about Irish records. But I get to play with paste, so, you know, swings and roundabouts. I am going to talk about a series of 7 registers that Lynn's already mentioned, one of which is the register of Archbishop John Swain. There we go, that's all 7 of them laid out on the table in consummation. They comprise of the working record of the archbishops they're named after, when they were primate of all Ireland. They're fascinating either draft or copied records of religious, political, economic and social goings-on in Ireland in the 14th to the 16th centuries. And also, as I mentioned, John Swain made his way to Italy and started recording disputes of all sorts. I think there's one of disputes with English and French, which all have annotations, angry annotations next to it, a long account with sort of comments made. Really interesting. But because it's Science Week, I'm not going to talk about the contents of them particularly. I'm going to stick to the science. But I'm sure there's recordings of talks that Lynn and I have done in the past about the contents, which are worth looking at. So, as said, these registers are composite organic objects made of materials which are all slowly deteriorating and have competing demands to remain stable. I'll be looking at Archbishop Sweetman's register, which is what we think is potentially Ireland's earliest paper record on the island anywhere, and John Swain. So, very unusually, the registers are mostly made of paper. As early as the 14th century, Sweetman's register is a mixture, but has more paper than parchment. Paper production is said to have started in China by Kai Lun, and it moved westward through financial and commercial exchange with Islamic countries in North Africa and the Middle East, who adopted the practice of paper production, which then arrived in Europe in the 12th, early 13th century. This is why the earliest European paper was produced in Spain and Italy, who are their closest trading partners. Parchment, however, remained the preferred material within Europe for almost 3 centuries more, as it was considered more durable than the easily damaged paper. But this changed with the invention of the movable type printing press and the quickly escalating demand for producing a printing surface. The incunabula period, which describes the shift from writing on parchment to printing on paper, happened between 1450 and 1501, and paper wasn't manufactured in Ireland for another couple of centuries. This makes 14th century paper within the Archbishop registers particularly rare. Here are some watermarks from Italy. The unicorn at the bottom right is referred to by the Briquet catalogue as Einhorn Italiano Schutup, and the dragon or basilica at the top is identified by the gravel databases belonging again to the Italian group. The only watermark that we've been able to place to a particular paper mill is the one on the left here, which is the Fabriano paper mill. And you might go into an art shop and see you can buy packs of Fabriano paper, and that's the modern mass-produced version that's coming from Fabriano with the star and crescent. Slide. There we go. The paper was ordered in gatherings and were bound at least once before James Ussher came along in the early 17th century. The bindings that he arranged are ones that we see today. They are blind-tooled, full leather bindings with pasteboards, distinctive with their delaminating layers at the corner, like a millefeuille, like you can bake off. The sewing supports are alum-tooled skin, which is a untanned leather. So it's spongy like leather, but it's very white like parchment. And it's wrapped around a leather core, potentially as to strengthen it. The paper in all 7 bindings had suffered mold damage before the current sowing dating between 1543 and 1630. The water and mould damage had attacked the cohesive strength of the paper, weakening the interfibrillar bonding. It left the paper soft to touch. Friable sections of papers with words written over 600 years ago had detached and become disassociated with the page it belonged to. Whilst the binding presents a historically important transition, the paper registers within are unique and provide a very scarce source of documents for medieval Ireland. So when we were looking at putting the treatment together, we were prioritising the registers within whilst trying to keep as much of that character of that binding as possible along with it. So, iron gall ink. There are many different recipes for iron gall ink. Here is one. A quick search of the PRONI database gives us one from the Nugent collection. But they always have 4 main ingredients. Vitriol or copperas for the iron sulfate, oak galls for the tannic acid, and it's those 2 ingredients that react together to give the inks its colour and its permanence. And then there's gum arabic and water that are used for the consistency. It was the dominant ink across Europe for centuries, and the variations are endless. You could add aloe vera, wine, beetroot, soot of linseed oil, anything. On the right is the example of where the ink has corroded through very thin pages, a page of a 19th century copybook. These are design geniuses because the paper was so thin. If you wrote something in iron gall ink, if you did it within 24 hours, you could wet out the page of the copybook, put the letter underneath, press it, and then the writing on your letter would transfer into the copybook. This process was helped by the fact that the pages were coated in tannic acid, so that when you're transferring the ink, that chemical reaction that created the ink is happening again, making it easier for the letter to be copied. Genius, right? Maybe just me, okay. So, in a similar way, the armour registers have areas where the page is discoloured in the bottom left. They have been galled, i.e. tannic acid was applied to the ink on the page to make it brighter and easier to read, but this is now discoloured. The inks and swaying registers are the distinctive brown colour of iron gall ink and have started to halo where the ink is particularly saturated. You can see that on this microscopic image of the ink. They were tested and confirmed that they were iron gall by using bathyphenethylene indicator paper that turned magenta in the presence of iron 2 ions, which are formed as the ink corrodes. But as you can see from the test papers, there's not much pink there. And that's because the inks are stable and this byproduct of corrosion isn't present, rather than them being a different sort of ink. And now at this point, the condition of the registers start to diverge, so we'll stick with Swain for the minute. The conservation of Swain's register took place in 2023 thanks to Virtual Record Treasury funding. It was the first major intervention with this volume since the early 17th century. The weakened or felted paper seen earlier required the application of a consolidant. There are a number of options available to conservators which have passed accelerated aging tests, such as methylcellulose. But gelatin was selected for 2 reasons. One, it was a standard size added to paper as it was being produced to make it a better writing surface. It's hydrophilic, so it'll stop the ink from being absorbed into the paper so much. So I wasn't introducing something new, I was reintroducing something that had been lost from the beginning. And number 2, there's a received wisdom passed down in conservation studios that iron gall ink and gelatin just work together and work well together. These received wisdoms need to be treated with caution. I have something which will revive that leather, no problem. It needs to be treated with skepticism. Leather's dead, you can't revive it. But not even with some of the chemicals that you see at the back of some conservation storage cupboards. but often traditional materials stand up to scientific analysis, and gelatin is one of them. In particular, I'm referring to the work of Alice Gimmett, Birgit Riesland, and Geza Kolber. Apologies for pronunciations. Gelatin appears to be particularly good at fixing those iron 2 ions, preventing the migration and the haloing. Also, gelatin is a larger molecule than water, and so it's unable to penetrate the cellulose fibre, and it coats the cellulose fibre with a hydrophilic coating, stopping the ink from attacking the cellulose fibre. But it also seems to be effective on paper which has already been written on. As the gelatin cools and gels, iron is chelated, lowering the concentration of the ink inside the fibre, delaying its degradation. The strength of gelatin was tested on the variety of handmade European laid papers in the studio at 4 different concentrations. Too weak and it would not have the desired effect, and too strong it would catch on the interleaving release layers of bondina, a non-woven conservation-grade polyester. The strong interfibular bonding of the new paper wasn't imitating the reduced cohesive strength of the mould damaged areas in the 15th century paper. So new sample paper was made with getting blotting paper, which we have in the studio. It's a nice 100% unsized cotton paper, but it's machine made, so it's pressed too much. So I took it home, put it in a blender, mixed it up, made a new pulp, formed some new sheets, and that seemed to do the trick. Some sheets were quite nice, other sheets I got impatient and tried to use my hairdryer to dry them, and then they flipped over on themselves. So yes, it was a learning experience all around. So 1.5% weight volume solution of type B gelatin, that's a bovine gelatin, was used, but porcine would have worked as well, was used for treatment. Using bovine gelatin is something I have more experience with because I used to work on Jewish collections, so I tried to stick away from avoid pork-based materials, but porcine gelatin would work fine as well. You probably can't see from the table, but different methods of application were tested. The paper was already going to be washed as the first step of treatment, as it was important to get as much of the ingrained dirt, migrating ions, and acidic build-up removed before applying the consolidant and sticking everything in place. Therefore, I decided to brush the consolidant to avoid additional handling of resubmerging it into a bath. The register was documented before the binding was pulled. Stephen from National Museums and I came and took a LiDAR 3D scan to record the swell of the spine and the characteristic disheveledness of the register. And the location of each folio and structure of the sections were recorded to ensure the text block was reconstructed accurately after the treatment. Here are the obligatory before and after photographs. Folios which had been upside down. That is the upside down, isn't it, Lynn? That one in the middle. Yeah, good. Medievalist is nodding her head. Okay. But every page was put back exactly where it had been for the last 400 years. If it was upside down when I took the binding apart, it was upside down when I put it back together again. You can rotate a photograph. You can't rotate the authenticity of a volume. Books are dynamic objects. The spine and joints with the boards need to move easily, but also to withstand significant stress. Where the book block is sewn particularly onto alum taured skin, sewing supports that I was talking about earlier, it is tensioned in the sewing frame. By sewing round it, the stitches nest into the spongy texture of the alum taured skin, holding it in place, so that when the sewing support is detached, it creates a spring which aids the movement of the spine. This is why they were the only part of the binding that was replaced. They were kept and are kept along with the register now, so they've not been thrown away. The register that has now been imaged by the reprographics team at PRONI and is in the virtual record treasury. As you can see, washing has removed much of the staining from the page. Ingrained dirt was carried by unclean water and deposited in the paper, and when it evaporated, when it was washed, it would dissolve in the water again. So I'm talking mainly about here and here, where it's disappeared. So, next. Now we're talking about the register of Archbishop Miley Sweetman. So, okay, sorry, I'll talk quickly. Miley Sweetman, earliest paper record, beginning of the 20th century. These repairs were done at the beginning of the 20th century. Unfortunately, the acidic tracing paper used negatively impacts the stability of the ink and rate of cellulose depolymerization. The photo at the bottom shows the acidic burn mirrored on the opposite page. Also, I put this one in on insects. We saw insects in Swain's register as well, but the poop there shows that it's 20th century excrement rather than 17th century excrement, which you never quite know with things that are that old. Bit of biology as well. There you go. So rigid polysaccharide gels are firm, stable material which is great for controlling the introduction of moisture into a paper, which is how we use it in this instance, and can act as a cleaning system. It gives you a longer time to work on a particular area. The stronger the concentration of the gel, the smaller the pores and the greater the capillary action for cleaning. Small quantities of gel were made to see their effectiveness at softening the water-soluble adhesive and how it would affect red ink, which is the most fugitive. The brown samples are the tracing paper repairs removed from another document which I had adhered onto the blotting paper samples. Gels also loaded with solvents, but deionized water was used in this instance. Working on Sweetman's register is a much more delicate process than Swain's because the paper is very soft and very fragile. The ink is being held on by a few fibres at the edges, and removing the repairs requires a lot of manipulation. Bit of ink sticking out from the edge. Okay. 1.5% weight volume solution of argyros and water was the gel which reactivated the adhesive whilst preventing the paper from disintegrating beneath. It's by far the most expensive, but it appears that Sweetman is high maintenance. Again, more before and after images, a layer of lens tissue was put between the gel and the paper to protect it from any residue being left. Can I just give it 2 seconds for it? And I'm running out of time. Okay. It's always there, but I just speed it up as I was doing. Okay. And then last slide. The pages were then gently washed on the suction table, which draws water and air through the page without any detached pieces floating off. Similarly to Swain's register, Sweetman was then repaired with Kozo paper and wheat starch paste. It's now collated together, trimmed, ready for digitisation and entry into the Treasury.